natural variation, including some research that might shock you. What do I mean by natural variation? Well, before you can enforce a range, you need to know what the natural range is, because nature often provides a range of values, and the INR does go up and down, and we need to know what it does naturally. The body self-balances. This is the famous word homeostasis, the principle of biology. Therapeutic range is usually set at 1 INR. So, if the desired range is 2 to 3, and you get less than 2, commonly the dose is increased to bring you back into range. Similarly, if you get 3.5 instead of 3, then the dose will be decreased to try and bring you back into range. But what if the natural range is more than 1? What if it could be more than 2? What is the natural variation? Well, you'd think there'd be a lot of research on this. Well, blow me down, I spent hours looking. I could be wrong. Warfarin has been used for over 50 years. Surely by now this natural range would be studied, and if you want like statistics, with confidence intervals and other nice posh measurements involved. So what is the natural range? We really don't know. And probably it would be unethical for doctors to loosen up control and find out. It's possible the data is out there. Possibly the only source of data is from self-dosers, those who feel free to take their own decisions. To my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's only one case study being published, and this in a reputable but minor journal. If you want to find it, there is the reference. Pause the video. It's my own case study, a case study of myself. Here's some of the evidence. I'm going to go slowly through this so it can sink in. Here is some of the evidence I have of swings, big swings. For instance, 2.3 to 4.66, a range of over 2.3. Or 1.8 to 3.85, a range of 2.05. Or 2.4 to 4.8, a natural range of 2.4. 2.5 to 4.48, 2.24 to 4.6, a natural range of 2.34. Think about it. In a single case study, the natural variation was 2.4 INR. Wow! That's not just 1.5 INR, it's a whopping 2.4 INR. Now, usual caveats. This is data from one person, and the test results were not double-checked. But this means, because of the margin error, it could be more. And if it's true for one person, is this unusual or is this normal? We don't know. But at least now we have case in point that one person, their natural range is more than 2 INR. Now, so what? Why is natural variation important? Well, look, if the natural range is more than 2, then dosing to achieve a narrow range of 1 will result in swings. I'll explain that in a minute. Swings are difficult to handle. Swings, that means 1 minute it's a low INR, then it's high, then it's low, then it's high. And swings can sometimes have a mind of their own and take off and result in greater extremes. We need to know what the natural variation is and work with nature. I'd like to invite you to a thought experiment. Take a typical patient, which I will use often in these videos. The daily warfarin dose is 5 milligrams, and the target range is 2.5 to 3.5. One day, the INR is 2.2. Now that's obviously too low, and it's verging into the zone of 2 where there is no protection. So the standard advice is a dose increase of 10%, which means a new dose of 5.5 milligrams. Probably the next time the INR will be greater than 4.5. And then there'll be a dose reduction of 10%. And that will swing and push the INR to 2 or less. Premature dose change leads to the dreaded swings. That's been my experience as a self-doser. Government health warning, and it's not just the experience of myself. There's a forum, a very popular one in Britain, called Health Unlocked. And here's a quote there from one of the leading members. What is interesting is that if I fell out of range, it took the system at least 2 or 3 goes to get me back due to the yo-yo effect. Swings, yo-yo effect. Whereas if I ignored what they said and carried on with the dose I've always taken, it returned much quicker. So here is somebody on this forum spontaneously saying that he would sometimes ignore the advice of their medical professions and things settled down and therefore avoided swings. But this is anecdotal. Let's turn to some research. Meyer et al. In 2007 did some interesting work. Now, their work compared a narrow range against a standard range. And their narrow range, which they were aiming for, was 0.5 INR versus a standard range of 1 INR. It's not quite the same, but the comparisons are good. Here are some comments. As anticipated, narrow range management was associated with a lower percentage of INRs in range. So, get that. If you try and force a narrow range, you'll end up with more figures out of range, which is what I've been saying. Another comment was, there was a higher percentage of INR results greater than 4 during narrow than standard range measurement. Again, this fits the story I'm arguing, that when you enforce a narrow range, that creates swings and it creates both extra highs and extra lows. And because there's a more margin in the higher end, you'd expect that there'll be more out of range results at the higher end than the lower end. Next quote. However, the incidence of INR results less than 2 did not differ significantly between narrow versus standard range management. And I will put that down to the margin of error problem, which I'll detail in another video. If you want to see that reference, here it is. If you don't know the trick, look at the PMID, the PubMed ID. If you go to PubMed and punch in that number, you'll get that reference. Another way is to punch in the DOI number and you'll get the reference. Now, my commentary. Enforced narrow ranges naturally lead to swings. That's the way nature works. And the swings in the INO curve are going to be into the zone above 4. Again, this is to be expected. The numbers can keep going up, but stagnate below 2. Since natural variation could be more than 2 INRs, how true is that? We don't know. Where is the research? This is just one example I'm providing, one, if you like, case in point. Now, if I'm the exception, I need to know I'm the exception. But if this is general, if even 10% of warfarin patients had a natural variation of more than 2, this would explain quite a lot. And in obliging a narrow range is fighting nature. So not surprising, there are swings. Where is the research on this? And if the natural variation is more than 2, it's time to modify the dosing guidelines. But first, watch my video on margin of error.